I'm speaking with writer-director Mark Nistico, whose new film Blue Collar Boys will have its premiere this Friday in Los Angeles. The film won Best Picture in the micro-budget category at the 2011 Toronto Film Festival and Best Screenplay at the 2011 Hoboken International Film Festival. But thank you so much for being here today, Mark.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure.
So, to start off, what inspired you to write the script for Blue Collar Boys? What was so appealing about the story to you as a filmmaker?
Well, the story's about struggle. It's about a working class family struggling to put food on the table, and the inspiration just came from witnessing that struggle. Especially, the film's very topical to what's going on with the economy today, and I guess it was just witnessing those stories and seeing almost a loss of hope in these families. That's kind of what made me say, well, I've got to tell story. I've got to tell that story. I've got to show that struggle, so I could inspire endurance through the economic times. Do you know what I mean?
Right, and it takes place in New Jersey, and that's where you're from, right?
Yeah, I've always wanted the film to have a universal theme, and I always wanted it to. I never really put it has to be in Jersey. I never really put an exact city on the film. Certainly it has a New York, New Jersey feel, right? Because we shot on location in that area. But I really wanted you to be able to look at the film and say, this is my hometown. This could take place in my hometown,
Right. Just to have I guess, universal appeal.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the theme is just an age-old theme of struggle, right, between classes. And so we definitely never put a name to the town, but it's important that the town be close to a city, so you could really feel what the characters are going through. And there's a lot of resentment in some of these characters. So yeah, the locale was important. But again, it really doesn't have to take place in Jersey. But certainly, when you watch it, if you're from the area, you're going to say, "Oh, that's right over there." So. It's the jewels that exist when you shoot on location.
Right, right. So now this is your feature debut, and I was reading from your other interviews and stuff about how you saved your money and wrote the script over a year. So you work your butt off for a year, and everything finally comes together. What was going through your head on day one of principal photography? What were you telling yourself?
Day one's always the toughest. What I was telling myself on day one was different when I was telling myself on day two. On day one, I really. There's so much pressure, okay? And you've got so much at stake. So at day one, I was just, I'm known, people around me will tell you I'm very meticulous, and of course that's kind of my approach to filmmaking. Is I kind of have a fine little microscope there on every little part of it. So on day one, I was saying to myself, relax. And have fun and let everyone else have fun, because I felt like it was going to be such a hard shoot. We were shooting in winter. It was going to be such harsh conditions, especially with the outdoor, the exteriors, and being on construction sites. It was like, if we don't start this off right and inspire the cast and crew to give them the courage to endure this shoot, then it's going to fall apart. So that was day one. Yeah, day one was like, have fun and relax. Now, certainly day one, we got nothing done. So my AD was like, listen, we only got one scene done here today. If we don't pick up the pace, we're not going to finish this. So day two was different. Day two was like, all right, I'm ready. Let's be Mark. Let's get that microscope on everybody. And it was really difficult to find the balance between those two perspectives, but certainly by the end of the first week, I think the entire cast and crew will tell you that we went from being, a sinking ship, a skeleton group, to a well-oiled machine.
And how many days was your shoot? How long did it take?
We we shot for about, I think the number is 27 days, including pickups.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, over the years, you shoot some second unit and third unit pickups, and that number might be 28 days in the last like year and a half, because you know the studio picks it up and they want this and that. So, but the key here was that, let's say it was 27 days over a period of about 2.5 months.
And you wrote, produced, directed, and edited the film. Did that become overwhelming, or did that give you a better sense of control over the direction that you wanted to go? And I guess talking about how microscopic and meticulous I'm assuming that helped you feel more in control, right?
Yeah, it's both. The answer is both on that. You definitely have more control, but it's a give and take, because it becomes overwhelming. And you know, on one of the other interviews, someone asked me this question, and I'll just elaborate a little bit further here. It's really about endurance and the way you get through it while you're doing everything like this, because it's so overwhelming and you could get discouraged. Is you stay close to your friends and family, and they're gonna give you the encouragement that you need to continue, because there are days where I was just, for years when I've been working on this, because I've been working on it for 4 years, where I was just like, this is too much. I can't do this anymore. And the tendency when you're producing and directing and editing and writing, it's you know, you have to approach all four of those things as if you are four different people, you know, and it's very difficult to do.
You got to wear different hats at different times,
and it's about controlling your emotions, because it would have been nice to have an editor, you know. It would have been great if we had the money, because that's the purpose of an editor. You know, the director is going to bring his emotions or her emotions from the shoot into the edit when you're looking at the footage. It's very important to separate that and have an objective point of view. So, you know, when I describe this, it gets kind of, it sounds a little insane, because you actually have to create two different people in your mind and have them fight against each other. You know, because the editor is going to do what's best for the film, and sometimes the director is always looking for what's best for the film. But in this case, oh, I love what so-and-so did in this scene. That was so fun to shoot. We got to keep it in. And no, you can't keep it in. You've got to cut it if it doesn't work.
Right.
So that's what the difficulties of that, you know. And of course, from the producing to directing, it's again, you know, we want everything. I want everything as a director, and as the producer, you know, well, the money's tight, so you can't have everything. So that's an interesting dynamic as well.
And describe working with composer Joe Lapinski. You know, I usually interview composers on my slate, but I'm not a composer. I'm a writer-director, so it's interesting to, I guess, talk to you about it from this side. Why did you choose Joe for the film, and what did you want his music to function in the film?
Well, first of all, Joe is just an amazing musician. This guy, he's Canadian, and he travels throughout Ontario and all the other provinces of Canada, but mainly Ontario, and back and forth from New York City, just playing in multiple bands. He's also a studio musician, and he's just he has such a wide range of talent. Joe also comes from, like everybody else in the cast and crew of the film, a working class town. He comes from St. Catharines, Ontario. What I thought Joe could bring, I had heard Joe play steel guitar on a composition that was designed for the film in terms of the source music, and it was just amazing. And so I approached him and I said, "Had you ever scored before?" He said, "No." But I wasn't really looking for a traditional score here. Music it operates in the film a little different than it would in a traditional score. There's very little manipulation of the audience through music, and if there is any manipulation, it's right on the cusp, right? So I thought Joe could bring just something unique to the score that a traditional composer wouldn't be able to bring. You know, he'd bring a knowledge of organic instruments, guitar, and the working man's feel, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And he certainly did. And he put up with a lot of my eccentricities. uh, you know, I always thank him for, because I experimented with a number of composers before Joe, and I just didn't like what was going on, and I was so fortunate to find him, and he was so patient with me, and so eager to get it right, and he just, you know, he brought something that just didn't exist at all in my mind, that just filled in any gap that we needed, you know, and it was just amazing. I love this.
Yeah, it's amazing when you're working on something and then the music comes in and it just adds a whole different layer that you didn't even realize it was there.
Yeah, and you know, I had a mathematical approach. It's kind of how I like to describe the insanity that I had written down about the score in my mind. It was so hard for a lot of these composers. They were like, "This is impossible. It's not going to happen." The score is interesting because, you know, the climax of the film doesn't take place at the end. It takes place about 2/3 through the film, and there's bookends in the film. And obviously, we go back in time and this and that. So the score is very mathematical in terms of the instruments that are used and the combination of instruments and how themes are introduced and then combined, and they all kind of culminate with this climax that's 2/3 through the film, and then that's when you hear the complete quote unquote symphony coming together, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And how we made it work was, you know, I was approaching it the wrong way. I was saying, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want it all up to add up to this. And Joe said, well, look, let me write that, and then we'll reverse engineer it. And that was the genius of Joe Lapinski, man.
Mm-hmm. And did you give him a temp track or did you give him a blank slate?
I gave him mainly just reference scores from movies.
Mm-hmm.
We referenced mainly Grizzly Man.
Oh, love it, yeah.
Yeah, I gave him that. I gave him that for what I wanted from the guitar. I think a lot of the guitar is a lot of open space. That's, you know, obviously there's some densities that exist in the score, but mainly it's a lot of open space with the letting the tones ring. And I got that from my inspiration for that I showed Joe was Grizzly Man, and it's just amazing to watch a musician. You put something on, they're like, oh, that's easy, and he just comes up with it on the spot, and it's like, that's exactly what I want. So, you know, Joe, this is just astounding to watch him do his work, and so I gave him that, and I gave him There Will Be Blood.
Johnny Greenwood, yeah.
Yes, you know, amazing score, and what we did with our score was inspired by what they did, which was the score in Blue Collar Boys is not just instruments, but it's tools used as instruments, very subtly, and I guess I was inspired for that through what they did with There Will Be Blood. And then I said go, and he said great. A lot of the composers, they all work different, but I guess some people would have been afraid of that, just having such an open canvas. And Joe was just painting.
Yeah.
You know?
So, and now you won. You did win an award for best film in a micro budget category. You know, being an independent filmmaker myself, just working on shorts, I've never done a feature myself. But what are some tips, the best tips that you can give to indie filmmakers who are filming on a micro budget?
Well, what I could say applies to this film, and I guess I'll preface this by saying, you know, each film's different, and each process has to be different. But what I knew going into this film and going into this time of making films where everyone can be making films nowadays is that it's a go big or go home mentality. it's, you know, you've got to make yourself stand out. And in the indie world, especially now that everyone has these DSLR cameras and you can just go out and film something, you really have to have just extraordinary production value, because we're struggling to be seen and heard. And I guess that's my advice. My advice is, you know, find the balance between having just really big locations and big shots, and something that's going to say this isn't just, you know, your backyard garage movie. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because a lot of times you see indies that are shot because they don't have any money. They have one location, and you know, they do their best to shoot what they can with what they have. And what we did on this film, and I didn't, as a producer, I didn't yield on this, and a lot of my guys that worked underneath me hated me for this at the time, because it was like it was a general.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was like, we need this, go get it. And they would say, we can't, it's impossible. And so, nothing's impossible, we need to go, And it was just push, 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 move, move, move. We need a big beginning, we need a big ending, we need a prison, we need a church that's a club, we need to shut down this town and do a big street scene. And as a producer, I guess that's my advice as a producer, right? You know, try to get it as big as you can so you can stand out. And then of course you have to balance that, because it's not just about big movies and big explosions, and you know, and that's certainly not what Blue Collar Boys is about. But again, that's how you get that's only half of it. I mean, from the production aspect, that's how you get people to look at it, you know, and say, oh, there's something here. And it goes across the board, from locations to casting to you know, it's just everything. Everything you have to have that mentality across the board with every little part of the production.
Mm-hmm.
You can put it all together, you're going to come out with something great. And then the next step is, how do you get people to realize it's great? Because there's a million great films out there that no one ever gets to see. And it's the same mentality. We went to Toronto, and we did Occupy Wall Street before they did it. We were in Toronto last year protesting as if we had lost our jobs in the middle of Dundas Square, which is like their Times Square. And then we walked and you know, we marched through the picket line there, through the financial district. We went right through you know, all the venues that, you know, were exhibiting films at the Toronto Film Fest. We made a huge buzz for the movie, painting the town with just tens of thousands of postcards and posters, handing them out on every street corner. It's the same mentality. They're not going to look at you, so make them look at you. When we blasted, we took an anvil and you know, with a sledgehammer, and when we were in the arts district, I guess it's considered. Oh, I might be wrong on that. I'm not sure exactly if it's on the border of the financial district and arts district. But anyway, we blasted it so hard that we were clearing businesses for 3 street blocks, you know, lunchtime. And everyone said, this is ridiculous. You're making a big scene. People are going to be upset. And I said, it doesn't matter if they're upset. They're going to know about the movie. And,
right, yeah.
And that was what got people to come to our screening. That's how we got on the radar. And that's how we got a lot of the press that we got from Toronto.
Wow, that's really cool. That's really cool. So looking back all the way from starting this journey 4 years ago up to the premiere coming up on Friday, what has been the most memorable moment?
That is so tough. You know, there's so many memorable moments, and they all just, you know, you have different emotions for every single one of them.
Right, yeah.
What I can say about this film is, it's a personal piece, and I did it for the working class, and so that they could see their lives on screen. And going into with that mentality, the most memorable moments for me are coming out of the screenings, especially Toronto and Hoboken, and actually in Syracuse we had, which we showed it last weekend. It's when these guys come out of the film and shake my hand and just are choked up, and they say, "This is my life." And I could think of, in Hoboken specifically, a guy that was my dad's age, just this really gritty looking blue collar worker, you know, with the big hands and the big forearms and everything. He was speechless. He was choked up. And he could barely talk. He says, you hit me here," and he points to his heart, and he just thanks me, and he's like, "Thank you," and that's why I'm doing it. That, especially for this movie, that's you know, the reward, because I feel like that's all I ever wanted for this film anyway. And now you've got the idea that you've accomplished what you set out to do. You know.
Right. Well, now I guess to wrap up the interview, I usually ask, when I usually interview composers, I usually ask them this from a musical sense, but I'll flip it and ask you if you could direct any movie ever made with no disrespect to the original director, which film would you choose?
Oh. These are great questions. Wow. Which film would I choose? Well, you know, I've got to, I've got to, I've got to pick a Scorsese film.
Yeah.
Everybody that knows me is going to say, "What's wrong with him if he doesn't pick Scorsese or Clint?" You know, at this time in my life, I would do. This is an interesting choice, but I would want to direct Scorsese's version of Cape Fear, because I've studied his career in film school, and you know, I don't like remakes, but I really like what he did with trying to throw back to the original, you know, especially with the score in that movie. And you got
definitely
in this interview, and I just think of what De Niro does in that movie, and how Scorsese is such a, you know, direct impact on all his actors. And then I think about, you know, how, you know, he didn't want to do The Picture for so much. At this point in my life, I feel like when you ask me that question, I'm going to say Cape Fear. It's not. I would have said something different to you 2 weeks ago, but just going through what I'm going through with, you know, the distribution company and how things work, and learning, you know, this part of the business, I feel like right now, let's do Cape Fear. Yeah.
All right.
I don't know. I can't describe it more, but there it is.
Good answer. I love it. Well, Mark, thank you so much for your time. It was a great pleasure, very insightful. I wish you the best of luck and everything, and you have my support, and hopefully we get to do this again with your next project.
Absolutely. I look forward to you know, hearing everything, and staying in touch, and appreciate you giving the opportunity to speak with you about the film.